everyone. In this video, we'll be discussing the do's and don'ts of a Venus retrograde. Stay tuned. All right, so the do's and don'ts of a Venus retrograde. First, let's talk about what is a Venus retrograde. So Venus retrograde has the same concept as Mercury retrograde, the most popular and most talked about one, but instead of Mercury-related issues such as miscommunications, frustrations with short-distance travel, and the like, concerns tend to lend themselves to all things related to Venus. So Venus rules both Taurus and Libra, and these are signs that are associated with relationships, beauty, aesthetics, the arts, our body, self-worth, and money. So every 18 months, Venus appears to stand still in the sky, so what we refer to as a station, and then makes the apparent motion of moving backwards. And this is a period we call retrograde. This is where she retraces her steps about 15 to 18 degrees for a period about 40 days. Now, during this time, during that Venus retrograde, it's very well known for people that you've had an old relationship with, like old lovers reappearing in your life. So if you're a Libra, Taurus, or Taurus rising, Sun, or Moon, you tend to feel out of sorts because you're ruled by Venus, and when Venus is retrograde, you don't feel you're shining at your best during this time. So relationships tend to fall apart if they've been on the rocks for a while. People often question themselves on how they look, and the number one question that we tend to contemplate during a Venus retrograde is, do I love it? Globally, economic uncertainties tend to come to the forefront. Issues around currencies and central banks, alliances on geopolitical level tend to make headlines. Were there negotiations, were there contracts made, alliances made, stuff like that. So let's talk about the do's of a Venus retrograde. Do review your relationships. Is everything going okay? How could they improve? Try not to make any hasty decisions during the Venus retrograde period. Review your expenses, comb over your financial details, and review your financial plans. Think it over and see what you want to move forward with when Venus moves direct. Get rid of things that you no longer need. Taurus is the hoarder of the zodiac, so clearing out items that you haven't used in a long while, and items you no longer need is a perfect way to use this energy. Now, if by chance you're looking at redecorating or actually considering a makeover, do the research. Make a vision board maybe, or make a file on your computer and gather up some ideas and revisit these ideas when Venus goes direct. Your perspective and your taste will most likely change, and you can decide at then what to move forward with. So take a look at your personal values. Also revisit maybe your diet and workout routine perhaps. Anything that affects your body personally, which will give you in the end a greater sense of self-worth. So if you've plateaued or been feeling stuck in and around, this is the perfect time to revisit this area. Revisit some existing contracts that you have, be it phone, cable, or internet provider, things like that. Look around and see what options are available to you and make that move when Venus goes direct. Venus also rules the money they make by the work you do, which is Taurus related. Maybe visit the salary that you're making per hour, or the fees that you're charging for the services that you're rendering. So Venus retrograde is a perfect time to see and research what kind of competition is out there, what are they charging for their services, what are your expertise in relationship in proportion to other people that are offering the same type of service that you are. So Venus retrograde is a perfect time to review these options. The don'ts of a Venus retrograde. So now let's talk about this. First and foremost, don't get married. Venus rules contracts and relationships, and marriage is a relationship contract. More often than not, pretty much most of the time, marriages that occur during a Venus retrograde tend to fall apart. I got married during a Venus retrograde. At the time I was an astrologer, astrology wasn't even on my radar at that time, and I had no clue whatsoever about what astrology was. And if the question is, how do I know how long this relationship is going to last? Well, Saturn is going to be the dictator of that one. You want a strong Saturn whenever you want to choose a date. to get married. And one of them is definitely not a Mercury retrograde, because communication tends to, miscommunication and the lack of communication tends to come about within the relationship, and as well as Venus retrograde. So Venus retrograde rules love, right? It rules relationships. So when you get married, it creates an event chart. And you want that event chart to be strong, and Saturn is one of the things that, you know, stands the test of time. So you want that well-placed, well-aspected, well-positioned within the chart. Aside from marriages, don't start a new relationship. Anything relationship-oriented that begins during a Venus retrograde doesn't tend to last. People you meet during this retrograde period for the purpose of dating take on a different light as Venus moves direct. Even when you meet people, because Libra is a very social sign, likes to get together, likes to relate to people. So new people that tend to merge into your life, creep into your life during this time, you tend to get a different opinion of them when Venus goes direct. Don't undergo any new body treatments. Keep your regular beauty routines, but don't try something new under this time. You know, things that your spa or even cosmetic center might be offering during this time. Sales that are going on to get people to try something new. Don't try anything new under this. Your body, your skin, whatever that treatment may be, will have most likely either like some adverse effects on your skin. See if there's different creams or treatments that you're putting on your body itself, or the makeover or the color that you're trying. These new hairdos, they won't end up as a result that you had in mind. Because it's definitely not recommended to try any type of new makeover while Venus is in retrograde, because you'll probably end up with a question that you'll be telling yourself, why did I do this? Because more than often, disappointment tends to ensue.
So this would be my first official makeover. I can like tell there's stuff on my face, like I have this extra kind of layer, but it's not anything crazy. Like I can understand how people would get used to it. Hold on. Oh God, oh God. Oh my gosh, I kind of look like a pumpkin that's been painted. I think the only thing I like is the lipstick, so maybe I'll snag that, but my face is a totally different color than the rest of my body.
Tattoos or body art of any kind, or especially a no-no during this time, pretty much it's because they're pretty much permanent. And when you get that tattoo, body art, piercings, whatever, once it moves direct, you more than often tend to have a sense of regret going forward, aside from possible reactions and irritational issues, rashes, that kind of stuff tend to surface as you go for any kind of these things during that Venus retrograde period. Shopping sprees for fashion, those tend to take on a different flavor when Venus retrograde is in the works. It's okay to buy an item or two, but to go on a whole shopping spree, you'll definitely look back and ask yourself, what was I thinking? What state could I possibly be in, and to choose to buy something thinking this is, something that I would like. And yeah, definitely don't be throwing out any type of fashion oriented stuff that's been part of your identity, stuff that you haven't been using, that has been sitting in a closet for a year or two that you haven't touched, is a different story. But something that you've worn regularly, I wouldn't get rid of that. It's okay to add to your wardrobe, but once that Venus goes direct from that retrograde period, you'll most likely look back on that and wonder, why did I buy this? Avoid buying luxury items. Buying new cars, okay, because you need to travel, you need to get from point A to point B. But the toys is a different story, because these are pleasure-oriented purchases. You'll probably end up paying more than you bargained for, or issues with, let's just say it's a boat, or a sea-doo, ski-doo, things like that. You could probably be sinking a lot more money than you've planned on to perhaps because of the reason is being repairs, or the bargain that you're hoping to get just doesn't end up materializing, and realizing that you ended up paying more than you intended to. Or when Venus goes direct, you find that other item, same thing, same deal as in the identical toy, the identical boat, where you could have got it for a much lesser price. So the big question that tends to be asked is, how do I know how this Venus retrograde will affect me? Well, Venus is very well known for making a 5-pointed star in the skies as she makes her rounds around the sun. Now, those 5 points tend to happen in 5 different areas of the zodiac. So every 8 years, Venus goes retrograde in the same area of the zodiac. So ever so slowly, she moves right over to another sign. But right now, July 22, 2023, as I'm making this video, she's going retrograde in the sign of Leo. Now, the last time she went retrograde in the skies in the sign of Leo was August 2015, and before that it was August 2007. Now, we tend to advise people is to think back approximately 8 years early when Venus would have been in retrograde. So in this case, it's Leo. So we look at where's Leo is in your chart, and this acts as a memory jogger. So if it's in your 7th house, did contract negotiations fall apart? Did a relationship not work out for you? Or if it's in your 3rd house, did you have a falling out with a neighbor or a sibling? Knowing the area of life that Leo governs in your chart will help you remember exactly what happened 8 years ago. Now, keep in mind that not every Venus retrograde the same. Like this one here will be flavored differently, as it makes 3 squares to Jupiter, to Pluto, and it makes 3 quincunxes to Neptune. Now, Uranus and Neptune, for most of us, will only be in that area in our lives one time and never to be experienced again. So aspects to planets will be different, and you'll notice but bottom line is that you'll most likely notice a similar theme coming up. The events will be different, but the core issue, the core theme is always present, and that area of life that it affects is the same. Now, Venus retrograde has 3 parts to it. It has the pre-shadow, the actual retrograde, and the post-shadow. So let's start with the pre-shadow. The pre-shadow is when she enters the degree point at which she'll station direct in the future. So in this case, we'll use July 22, 2023 as an example. Venus will station retrograde at 28 degrees, retrace her steps, and station direct at 12 degrees. So as she makes her first visit within that area, that first area of the zodiac, and in this case in the sign of Leo, so Leo 12 degrees, she enters what we call a pre-shadow period, because this is the time where she retraces her steps. Now, the actual retrograde period is when she stops and stations to go retrograde, and this here is the retrograde period. And then she will station direct at 12 degrees, and as she goes back over this period, this is called the post-shadow period. So once she goes back to that 28 degrees at which she retrograded and passes that, we have officially ended the complete Venus retrograde season as a whole. Now, when a planet, any planet, stations and changes direction, that's when the energy of that planet is especially potent. Things to notice is the degree points where a planet stations direct, stations retrograde, and any major aspects that she'll continue to make during this retrograde period is important to take note of. In this case, the 3 squares to Uranus, surprises are abound, the squares that she'll make to Jupiter, because we have Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, and Taurus naturally squares Leo in the zodiac, and while we have Neptune in its sign of rulership in Pisces right now. So she'll be making these quincunxes to the planet Neptune. So there's a lot to take stock of in this particular Venus retrograde period. And by taking notes and writing things out as these aspects occur, and these points have been hit of these stations and directs will give you a better sense and understanding how Venus retrograde will work. And obviously, don't forget to think back to 8 years prior. And these are themes that you'll notice that keep coming up time and time again. Well, I hope this educational video has been of help to you, knowing the do's and don'ts of a Venus retrograde, what to look out for, how to navigate it, and understand it a little bit better and how it operates for you personally. So with that, I thank you very much for tuning in. If you've been here for the first time, don't forget, please do hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel tremendously, obviously, and it helps keep me going with the educational videos and the work that I do here on the channel. Also, don't forget, do visit www.co-creating-today. There you'll find some educational products. More will always be in the works, as one of my passions is to create educational products and children's games and activity books and the like to assist the astro-curious or even the astro-student on their astrological journey and make the learning process that much easier. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on my channel again next time. Have a great day.